is where the action is. Our president and founder is the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. Chairman of our board is Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson, senior pastor at Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York. I'm attorney Michael Hardy. We'll be with you throughout the broadcast this morning. We're so pleased today to have with us for our inspirational word segment Richard X. III. He's the chaplain at Rikers Island here in the great city of New York. Also, our musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson, is in place. And if it's Saturday, our dear sister, coordinator of all things here at National Action Network and the liaison to Reverend Al Sharpton, will be here to ask you what's on your mind. That's right, there should be a lot that you're thinking about because there's so much happening around the world, in your home, in your community, that there's got to be something on your mind that you want to share with Katrina Jefferson. As always, if you've not had an opportunity to share anything on your mind with Katrina, you can still do so. You can call 877-626-4651, or you can email what's on your mind at nationalactionnetwork.net and let her know what you are thinking about. Of course, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton is here and getting ready to come to you, so you want to call somebody. Tell them it's Saturday. Tell them the action is on the air. Tell them that we are a week away from the March on Washington, the continuation of the 60th anniversary of the historic 1963 march, and that the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton is in the house and getting ready to come to you. But right now, brothers and sisters, our dear sister, member of the New York City chapter, J. Spencer Hilaire, is going to come and give you some additional information. Let's give her a welcome.
Good morning. And thank you for being here, and thank you also for tuning in to another Saturday Action Rally with National Action Network. Here is some information to keep you in the know. 1 week until the March on Washington. In just 1 week, next Saturday, all roads lead to the nation's capital for the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. National Action Network and the Drum Major Institute have been busy organizing the demonstration, which won't be a commemoration of Dr. King's historic march, but rather a continuation of his fight for freedom, justice, and equality. NAN, Martin Luther King III, and Andrea Waters King have partnered with 60 national organizations representing everything from labor and civil rights groups to Jewish, Latino, Asian, and LGBTQ communities. The Unified March will be a collective response to the vitriol, rise in hate crimes, attacks on civil rights, protections, and threats to democracy itself. The time to speak with one voice is now. The March on Washington will convene at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. at 7 a.m. March participants will enter on 17th Street between Independence and Constitution Avenues. Following the program at the Lincoln Memorial, we will march through the streets of the nation's capital, culminating at the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. The March on Washington will be a cross-cultural and intergenerational demonstration to show that an attack on one is an attack on all of us. You can still join us. In fact, we look forward to seeing you at the March on Washington on Saturday, August 26th. For more information and to register, please visit www.nationalactionnetwork.net or call us at 877-626-4651. Again, 877-626-4651. Welcome to all of you who have tuned in and joined us also via live stream at www.nationalactionnetwork.net and also live on Facebook at National Action Network. If this is your first time joining us, or if you are not a member of NAN, we welcome you to NAN and invite you to join us and get into the action. Today, for more information and to join, you may visit www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Let me repeat, www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Call 877-626-4651 or text the word NAN, uppercase, to 59769. Welcome.
All right. Thank you, Sister J. Right now, brothers and sisters, our dear sister, coordinator of all things here at National Action Network's House of Justice, liaison to the Reverend Al Sharpton, wants to know what's on your mind. Good morning, Katrina Jefferson.
Good morning, Attorney Hardy, and good morning to each and every one of you who are here live here at the House of Justice, to those that are watching by way of live streaming on our Facebook page and on our website, www.nationalactionnetwork.net, and to you who are listening by way of WLIB 1190 AM. Welcome to another weekend's conversation of What's on Your Mind, where you, the people, and the community have the opportunity to interact with us here at the National Action Network by sharing your thoughts and your viewpoints with us. You know, maybe you've been watching the news like so many of us have across the country, and you have something that you want to bring to the forefront. Well, we're going to preface this week for everybody that's here in the house, because I see a very, very, very hefty line. We are talking about the March on Washington. That's on my mind, and that's what's on everybody's mind across this country. So before I get to you, provided that time permits, please make sure your remarks are directly pertaining to the March on Washington, which is August 26th in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. We have been partnering with organizations across the country, as Attorney Hardy has indicated, and certainly want to make sure you are in the house. So if you are anywhere in the United States and you still have time to get there, number one. Number two, we still have bus seats available, particularly for those that are in the tri-state area. And so please make sure that you contact us here at the House of Justice at 877-626-4651. Good morning. Give us your name. Let us know where you're from. Share with us what's on your mind as it relates to the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington.
Sandra Hanson Simpson from the Bronx of New York, the Boogie Down. I thank God for Reverend Al Sharpton and Michael, the lawyer, giving us good information, because sometimes the information I don't know, he gives it up to us. And I try to tell my children the same thing. Come and listen and learn.
And will you be with us in D.C. on next Saturday?
Yes, I will.
Are you bringing someone with you?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Let's do like Sister Sandra is doing and bring somebody with us. Good morning. Give us your name. Let us know where you are from and share with us what's on your mind as it relates to what?
The March on Washington.
All right.
Right. My name is Reverend Crum Goddess Kennedy, originally from Saratoga Springs, New York, now in the Boogie Down Bronx. I cannot be with you all, but I will be praying every step of the way when you all go to Washington. Everybody under the sound of my voice, especially the LGBTQ community, get on the bus and make sure that you get on the bus next Saturday, because it's of the utmost importance, because they come for you in the morning, they will be for us that night, they will come for you in the morning. So it's of the utmost importance that we join forces, get on the bus, and make sure you're there to make your presence heard.
All right, thank you so much, Reverend Mother Chrome Goddess Kennedy. Good morning. Give us your name. Let us know where you are from and share with us what's on your mind as it relates to what's happening in D.C. on next weekend.
Yeah, good day, everybody, and God bless everybody. My name is Sister Reverend Word. I'm from Heaven Born in Harlem, and I'm a lifetime National Action Network member. What's on my mind, of course, is Bible scriptures and Christ Jesus in particular. But in this case, we are shown by Christ Jesus that there are missions for us that are possible. And one mission that is possible is attending the March on Washington. This is something that I've looked forward to, like, whenever we can. We need to be there to let these politicians know we want their service to be supportive of democracy, therefore supportive of us. God bless you all. Good day.
Thank you so much for sharing. Good morning, my brother. Give us your name. Let us know where you're from and share with the people what's on your mind today.
Yeah, my name is Rick Wilby. I'm out of Inglewood, New Jersey. And on the 60th anniversary on the March on Washington, I just hope that this time when we march on Washington, we go there with demands. Every time you commit a crime against the black community, there has to be some kind of accountability and some kind of reparations that are being paid to black people. 60 years after the fact, 400 or 500 years of slavery, Jim Crow, and everything else that's been going on, we need to also demand that our money goes into our pocket more so it goes into Ukraine. Reparations now.
Thank you. And lastly, we're going to close out this weekend segment. Well, two things. I got one other thing to say. If you are interested in volunteering, there are still opportunities for you next weekend. Please see me immediately following the rally. I will be right here up front. And if you are not here, if you're watching and you want to volunteer, you can call the House of Justice at 877-626-4651. Ask for Katrina, and we'll connect you to the volunteer opportunities happening in Washington, D.C. And if you are in New York and would like to volunteer this week, as we make calls to partners to ensure that they have their seat reserved on the bus, please see me immediately following the rally. If you're not here and you still want to volunteer this week, call 877-626-4651, and we'll make sure to get you a schedule, and I'll give you a quick debrief of what we're looking to do to make sure that all roads and all people are leading and heading to D.C. next weekend. We're going to close out this weekend segment with an email submitted by our very own House historian from Queens, New York, Rodney Jones, who's also a bus captain this week for one of the buses leaving from Queens, New York. And this week's topic is on the First African Baptist Church. We're talking about our history. Why? Because they're trying to stomp it and erase it from the education books. First African Baptist Church, located in Savannah, Georgia, claims to be derived from the first Black Baptist congregation in North America. While it was not officially organized until 1788, it grew from members who founded a congregation in 1773. Its claim of first is contested by the Silver Bluff Baptist Church, Aiken County, South Carolina, and the First Baptist Church of Petersburg, Virginia, whose congregation officially organized in 1774. George Lely, a slave who was in 1773, was the first African-American licensed by the Baptists to preach in Georgia, played a part in the founding of the Savannah Church by converting some of its early members. His initial licensing as a Baptist was to preach to slaves on plantations along the Savannah River in Georgia and South Carolina. Lely's master, a Baptist deacon, had freed him before the American Revolutionary War. Over the next few years, Lely converted and baptized slaves in the area. These concluded David George, one of 8 slaves who were baptized and formed a congregation called the Silver Bluff Baptist Church in Aiken County, South Carolina, across the river from Augusta. George was appointed an elder and preacher and attracted nearly 30 members over the next few years. No justice, no peace. And briefly, what's on my mind? 2 years ago, around this time, I was heading to D.C., 6.5 months pregnant. And I am proud to say this weekend, I'll be heading back out, of course, to finalize logistics on the ground there in D.C., joined by my very own frontline loudmouth, Kitty. And that's what's on my mind today. She'll be joining me next week in D.C. That concludes this weekend's conversation of what's on your mind. Keep in mind everything that you heard here was simply the thoughts and the viewpoints, the perspectives of the listeners, and do not pertain to those directly by the National Action Network. And you can interact with us 24 hours a day. Yes, 24, by emailing your thoughts to what's on your mind at nationalactionnetwork.net. Again, that email address is what's on your mind at nationalactionnetwork.net, or you may call us at 877-626-4651, or you also have the opportunity to join us here in person. And remember, next weekend, all roads lead to where? Washington, D.C. Back to you, Attorney Hardy.
All right, thank you, Katrina Jefferson, for this week's What's on Your Mind. Right now, our NAN Change Choir soloist, Tisha Hunter.
A change, oh, a change has come over me. He changed my life, and now I'm free. He washed away all of my sins, and He made me whole. You know He washed me white and snow. Listen, He changed my life complete, and now I sit at His feet to do what must be done. I'm gonna work and work until my change comes. A wonderful change. Hey. A wonderful change.
Keisha Hunter, our NAN Change Choir soloist, accompanied by the ensemble, and all under the direction of our musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson. Brothers and sisters, we're going to bring you in the house. Our dear sister, Nola Tucker, president of the Welcome Committee, is going to bring us in the house. In the house is all about the work of the committees of National Action Network and what they do, how they do, and when they do, and how they're there for you. And Nola Tucker, Welcome Committee, is coming to talk about what she does.
Thank you, Michael Hardy. Good morning, NAN family, and welcome to the National Action Network. My name is Inola Tucker, and I'm a lifetime member and the chairwoman of the Welcoming Committee. How many lifetime members do we have in the audience today in the House of Justice? Make some noise. I have a question for you. Why should you join the National Action Network? Well, I will share with you why I joined the National Action Network, and maybe you too will be inspired to do the same. My journey here at the National Action Network started when I volunteered for the Second Chance Committee. This committee educates and raises awareness of what's happening in our prisons and in jails that affects the people who are incarcerated. The journey didn't stop there. I would hear Reverend Sharpton every Saturday saying to the new members, turn around and face the audience and welcome them to the National Action Network. And that's when the idea of the Welcome Committee came into existence and the creativity of the Welcome Package, and the rest is history. I have been volunteering ever since. Would you like to do that too? Yes, you can. Just call 877-626-4651. Join today. Sign up. Become a member. It is just that simple. We have many committees that you can get involved in here at the National Action Network. So I will share with you what the Welcome Committee has been doing. You may ask, what's in the Welcome Package? NAN Welcome Package is filled with information about NAN organization, upcoming events, and useful items that you will be happy to have. NAN Welcome Committee has a table set up on Saturdays and on special events, ready to display NAN t-shirts, caps, pins, buttons, for anyone who are interested. The Welcome Committee on Father's Day handed out gift bags of delicious desserts, while Reverend Sharpton gave out ties. The Welcome Committee will continue to fundraise, work side by side with NAN committees. We will build alliance with our community merchants who supports NAN during the year. Just call 877-626-4651. You can see me here today after the rally, or you can email me at nanwelcomecommittee@gmail.com and be a part of History Makers. Has everyone registered to get on the bus for the 60th anniversary March on Washington, Saturday, August the 26th? Make some noise. Does everyone has a t-shirt, a NAN t-shirt? If not, stop at the NAN table before you leave. NAN Welcome Committee and the African American Day Parade Committee is inviting marchers to be a part of that event. We need you to put on your marching shoes and join us with the National Action Network banner in front of our NAN float this September. For more details and date, call 4651. If you're here at the House of Justice when Reverend Sharpton welcomed new members, take some pep in your step and lightly fist bump Reverend Sharpton and join the NAN family. On behalf of Reverend Sharpton and the Welcome Committee, we pray upon you joining and for you to feel welcome into the family of the National Action Network and find a special place for your passion to volunteer. Call now, right now, 877-626-4651. No justice? No peace. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Enola Tucker, bringing us in the house this morning under the direction of our musical director, the ensemble. God is my He'll be your father. He'll be your sister. He'll be your brother. I'm glad to know. God yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's my everything. He's my all in all. God is. God is mine. I want to thank you. I want to praise you. Yeah. God is. God is mine. The NAN Change Ensemble, under the direction of our musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson. All right. Brothers and sisters, it is our honor today to have with us for our inspirational word segment the brother Richard X III. He is the chaplain of Rikers Island here in the city of New York. Let's give him a great welcome.
In the name of the beneficent, the merciful, the most loving, and the most kind, first giving thanks to Reverend Al Sharpton and all who labor in love and justice with him. Good morning, friends. The psalmist asks this question: where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you still are there. Friends, I've seen hell before. The weeping, the gnashing of teeth, the eternal separation, the damnation and the torment, the sorrow and the darkness. When you hear this description, I'm sure some of us are thinking of the Left Behind series we saw growing up. We're thinking of ghost-like figures with red skin and pitchforks. But I'm not speaking of that kind of hell. The English word hell in the psalm is linked to this word called Sheol. Sheol is mentioned 66 times in the Hebrew Bible. It is also meant to mean pit or grave. It is a word not just for what happens when life ends, but when life feels like it is ending. It's not always for when you have an absence of breath, but you can have breath in your body and feel like you are in hell. That's why we use phrases like a living hell, or it hurts like hell, or even hell no. Because we know that life can feel like hell. Divorce can feel like a bed in hell. Depression can feel like a bed in hell. Sickness can feel like a bed in hell. Heartbreak can feel like a bed in hell. And a prison can feel like a bed in hell. In theology, we have something called the law of first mention. That when you want to know what something means in Scripture, you have to look and find for the first time it was used. The first time we see the word Sheol, what we understand to be hell, we see it used in the Genesis story to describe the location of the first prisoner in the Bible, Joseph, and the first prison he finds himself in. So here we have in the Bible at the same time the mention of the first prison and the mention of the first hell. Isn't that ironic? Or maybe it's not ironic at all. According to Steve Martin, the federal monitor and the Legal Aid Society over in New York City, this is quite the adequate description of Rikers Island. A hell. In their last report, they called Rikers a place of, quote, imminent harm, a place that is, quote, persistently unsafe, a place there is, quote, no relief from violence of any kind, a place that is dangerous, frightening, and, quote, a grave. Stabbings at an all-time high, slashings at an all-time high, uses of force at an all-time high, self-harm and self-harm attempts at an all-time high, deaths at an all-time high. Sounds like hell to me. Just 7 miles from here, just 7.3 miles from where the United Nations just finished celebrating 75 years on the Human Rights Declaration, we have brothers, sisters, siblings living in a bed in hell. May not be pitchforks, may not be red skin, there may not be fire, but it is hell. I've seen more weeping tears than I can count. I've seen more pain and frustration. I've seen families torn apart. I've seen the place decay people's spirit. I've seen the willingness to leave out of people's eyes. I've seen darkness. I've seen brokenness from addiction that they got from within the prison. I've seen hands that couldn't stop shaking and trembling from a day long of strip searches. I've heard screams of spiritual torment from solitary confinement. I've seen hell. I've seen fire. I've seen brimstone. I've seen hell. As we gear up for the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, I want to remind us of a quote from King that often goes unused from that day. That when speaking on why he was there, he said, quote, "I am here because the Negro still is not free." And what if we understood ourselves as not free because we have siblings who are not free? Because we have brothers and sisters who are living in hell. I want to use a word that is an uncomfortable word to describe what they're living in. I want to use slavery. And that's uncomfortable because we know the history, we know the brutality, we know the violence, we know the viciousness, we know the blood, we know the pain, but that may be the only word to get you to see what is going on. We've become too comfortable with prisoner, too comfortable with prisons, but we have to understand it as slavery. It's slavery when you can't decide when you eat or drink, when you wash or do not wash, when you see family and when you don't. It's slavery when you have to be stripped down to your clothes to see a judge, when you have to suffer through using the facilities on yourself on buses behind bars and cages. It's slavery. And I want to use the word slavery so we can be clear that there can be nothing we call justice while Rikers Island is still open. And I know most of us has been tricked into thinking that prisons make us safer. They don't. There is nothing safe about taking someone and putting them in a place without access, without resources, without dignity, without clothes, without family, without mental health, without autonomy, without protection, and then releasing them into a community without resources, without job opportunities, without civic power, without credit, without cash flow. How will that make you safe? I know most of us have been taught to think of prisons as places for people who are guilty, but Malcolm taught us to be born black in America is to be born in a prison. When has innocence ever saved a black child? It's not my intention to harm you, but brothers, sisters, siblings, we have been made slaves. Slaves to patriarchy, slaves to capitalism, slaves to imperialism, slaves to materialism, slaves to gender normativity, slaves to heteronormativity, slaves to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed savior. We have all been made slaves to something. But in this Black August, I want us to remember the words of our dear sister Asada Shakur, who taught us if one of us isn't free, then none of us is free. I want us to remember in this Black August the words of Hebrews 13:3. Remember those who are in prison as if you are in prison. I want us to remember the words of our prisoner, slave, savior, Jesus of Nazareth, who said, as you do unto the prisoner, you have done unto me. And if none of those work, I want you to remember one small scripture in the book of Acts that we read every Sunday while holding hands in Rikers Island. And at midnight, Paul and Silas begin to pray. And the prisoners heard them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake. James Baldwin said their dungeon shook, so that the foundations of the very prison began to shake. And all of a sudden their bonds were loose, their chains were broken, and all went free.
That was Richard X III, chaplain of Rikers Island here in New York City, the Change Choir.
Started me on
Yes, indeed, the Change Choir, under the direction of the great and honorable musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson. Brothers and sisters, I want you to stay on your feet and put your hands together for the president and founder of the National Action Network, the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton.
No justice. No justice. No justice. No justice. What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? 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 Fist bump the person next to you. Tell them you love them. Years ago next week, people journeyed from all over this country and headed to Washington. Why did they go? They wanted to stand up and protest Jim Crow, racism, anti-Semitism, and many things that plagued that nation at that point in history. Many had to go right in the back of buses. A lot of folk don't realize in '63, Jim Crow was still a law of the land in the South. They didn't have a public accommodations law until '64. They had to ride in the back of buses, couldn't stop at a restaurant on the road, couldn't use a public toilet. But they came and stood up against those that were the custodians of segregation. Many of those that were the ideological children of the racists and segregationists of that time said, we just gonna wait them out. Okay, they got the Civil Rights Act the next year, they got the Voting Rights Act, but we ain't never gonna give up because we believe we are superior. We are supremacists for real. And over time, they began to drum down some of those laws and began to turn around the fact that, yes, we did get voting rights. Yes, we did get public accommodations. But they came back and built, as Richard X talked about this morning, they expanded the penal system. They locked us up and locked us down, started eroding votes, started playing one against the other, blacks against each other. Blacks fighting gays like you can't be black and gay at the same time. Blacks fighting women, blacks fighting Jews, blacks fighting Muslims. But 60 years later, we coming back to Washington to show that just like you are the children of white supremacists, we're the children of those that backed you down in the first place. Because we know from our parents that if we just hold on, our change will come. We're going back with an agenda of fighting against hate crimes, fighting against criminal injustice, criminal justice that is unjust, our voting rights. Heard one of our brothers talking about reparations during our What's on Your Mind. And a brother stopped me the other day and said, Reverend Al, I heard about the march, I'm going. He said, I'll be glad when we don't have to march no more. I said, well, let me tell you something. If you think we're going to have one season, one march, and it's all going to be over, then you should have stayed home in the first place. This is a struggle from the beginning of time, a struggle of good and evil, a struggle of right against wrong. And we've got to keep on going and run our lap. Because the race isn't given to the swift, nor to the strong, but to those that can endure to the end. If you can hold out, if you can keep going, your change will come. Your change will come. Your change. Just hang on in there. Your change. I know it will. Your change. National Action Network Change Choir. Give them a hand. Give them a big hand. Certainly we're happy to be with you another Saturday morning for the Saturday Action Network rally, for the Saturday Action rally here at the House of Justice. For you that are here in the auditorium at 106 West 145th Street in the village of Harlem, and for you that are listening live on WLIB 1190 AM, and you that are watching on various platforms, we're happy to be with you again for Saturday morning to give our report on where the action is. Give a hand to our presider, Attorney Michael Hardy. Our musical director, Minister Tyrone Richardson. Give Chris and our band some. I only got one guitar this morning, so I'm not going. Where's the other one? Oh, he went to the restroom. I was going to say, I can't do the good foot without my whole band. Let me also give a hand to our inspirational speaker. Give a hand to Brother Richard X. And I'm glad he spoke about mass incarceration. Our Second Chance Committee, Victor, and those that work with Victor. Too often, and the reason I was glad he addressed it, too often those of us that are free, or at least we think we are, forget about those that are locked down, in many cases unjustifiably. And there's nothing more dehumanized than to be locked down, especially when you know you're there because of your class and your race. I've been arrested on doing civil rights work 32, 33 times. One reporter counted it. I don't even know. I've probably been arrested since then. And I spent time on Rikers Island. I had to do 30 days one day. And let me tell you something. As he described it, there is nothing more humiliating. I did 90 days in federal prison on the Vieques protest. Nothing more humiliating than to have to wait on somebody to tell you when you could eat, or to strip you down and make you bend over twice a day, especially when you are only there because you fought for others. I was telling some of the correction officers, I'm going through this for your children. In fact, I'm going through it because it got you a job. Because if it wasn't for some protesting, you wouldn't have no blacks locking us up in the first place. Nothing crazier, even in slavery days, than blacks joining the slave catchers like they wasn't slaves. Think about that. How twisted your mind must be that you're going to help somebody catch somebody, that they're going to catch you next. Let's welcome our Impact TV family. But let me say this, and I want to first, I want to dedicate this broadcast this morning to the memory of a fallen brother who made his transition. Many of you know Minister Clemson Brown, who was the videographer of our movement. In fact, a lot of the footage that was in Loudmouth, the documentary out of me, Clemson Brown gave some of his archives, and he documented a lot of the work of Bishop Herbert Daughtry, who's being honored at Harlem Week tomorrow. And a lot of the documentation through the years, he made his transition last week, and I don't know of anyone documented more and was more consistent than Minister Clemson Brown. Give Minister Clemson Brown a big hand. Come on, give him a big hand. Clemson Brown, y'all. It's a lot of the unsung heroes and a lot of those that don't make media that we ought to raise up, because you know they were not doing it for attention. They were doing it because they were paying attention. And Clemson Brown was certainly one of those. Let me also remind all of you, many years ago when they started Harlem Week, they thought it was just something that was going to happen and not happen. They'll do it a few years and it'll go away. But thank God for Lloyd Williams and the Harlem Chamber of Commerce. That make sure that every year in August, our community comes together. Those of us that may not agree on tactics, those of us that may not agree on ideology, those of us that may not agree on religion, but we all come together in a festive occasion and in some serious exchanges, and all come together. I remember as a little boy, Harlem Week, where Adam Clayton Powell, who was my original hero, rode the back of a car with his fist up. And then it went to the next generation of Percy Sutton and Charlie Rangel, and then the next generation, on and on. So when you see the top entertainers and top entrepreneurs and creative artists and others come to Harlem for Harlem Week, it is because they're celebrating the roots that they became fruits of. So I want us to support it and to be present. Among the things we're going to do this year is honor Harry Belafonte. Lloyd Williams told a story last week is that Harry did not want to have a funeral service in a large cathedral that he didn't believe in. Many of you all were there when Harry addressed our dinner, our NAN convention. And he said, you know, I really didn't like preachers. He said, Martin King had to win me over. He says, and then he never told me to be another preacher, but I'm here with Al Sharpton. So I was not surprised when they told me he wasn't going to have a funeral, but he wanted all of us to speak in memorial. And I've worked with his family and his widow. We're going to honor him. The community is going to honor Harry Belafonte at Harlem Week. And we're honoring, as I said, Bishop Herbert Daughtry. Bishop Daughtry, now at 93 years old, still out here, was at the rally here last week, still on the road, still doing and still active. Founded the National Black United Front and led for decades, pastored the House of the Lord Pentecostal Church, which has been the headquarters of many of our movements. And at 93, doesn't miss a lick, not a rally, not anything that helps people. Some of y'all are much younger than that and complain all the time. I went to the rally last week. I could miss a couple of weeks. Oh, I'm tired of this, I'm tired of that. At 93, he jumps up every day doing something active. That's why those that are younger ought to be inspired by those that keep going at an old age. I go to the office every day I'm in town. I'm inspired looking at Attorney Hardy moving around the office. Puts a little pep in my step. That's what Iola said this morning, pep in your step. I heard you. I get mine watching Attorney Hardy prod around the office. But there is a madness, there's a sickness of those that have been taught to try and bury their elders rather than exalt their elders. Let me tell you something. Anytime people try to trick you into a generational fight, they are not your friends, they're your enemies. Say that again slow. There's nowhere in any scripture, I don't care if you are Christian, Muslim, Jewish, all scriptures lead to the respect of generation to generation. Only the wicked want to break you up from your inheritance from the generation ahead of you. I mean, read the Bible. It goes from Abraham to Isaac, on and on. When we first hear about Jesus, Matthew, first chapter. First thing they did is in the first chapter of Matthew, go from his lineage back to David and show that he was an heir to David, in line with David. Many of us that are in the struggle were mentored and looked up to those that were ahead of us, because you understand that you are not the original anything. You're the continuation of a struggle. And if your ego is so unstable that you cannot defer to the fact that you at best are a link in a long chain, then nobody ought to pay you any mind anyway, because you don't have good sense. That's why I want to say that as we go into 60th anniversary next week. We're not going there to commemorate, we're going to continue a fight. Why? Because those that we are fighting are continuing a battle of white supremacy. So they say, why y'all still marching? Because of the same people that our fathers and grandfathers had to march on are now trying to bring down this country. Let me put this in context. This is not just a race thing. We are looking on the brink of this country falling apart. The very values, the very concepts, the very things this country proposed that it would be is at risk now. Even though the founding fathers of the United States never lived up to their credo, they respected it. They preached it. They professed it. This is the first time in American history that you actually see people outright represent the ending of the concept of democracy. You realize leading up to this week, going to Washington, that they're going to fingerprint and mugshot a president of the United States? Before we get to Washington Saturday, they will have fingerprinted and mugshot Donald Trump. They will have fingerprinted and mugshot Rudy Giuliani. And why are they handcuffing and fingerprinting and mug shooting them? Because they tried to steal an election that their forefathers fought King George to have the right to have an election. Think about that now. The rebellion that became the American Revolution was about they were against monarchies. Trump, Giuliani, and all of them tried to establish a monarchy. Tried to rob votes. Y'all heard the tape where he's on the phone, called the man 18 times. And he's on the phone saying to the Secretary of State of Georgia, all I need is 11,780 votes. What convicts him in my mind, Reverend Stephen Marshall, is not that he just asked for the votes, it's what he said behind that. He says it's all right to say you had a recount. Now that shows intent. He didn't ask him, did you have a recount? He told him it's all right to say you had one. Giuliani, who put gangsters in jail on the RICO Act, is now being arraigned on the RICO Act. Both of them that tried to break up all of us When the FBI, former FBI Director James Comey wrote his book, he wrote on page 22 or 23, when Giuliani was a U.S. attorney, Southern District, he came to work for him. He was an assistant U.S. attorney, Comey. Said the first time he saw Giuliani, he was in his office working and he looked up and Giuliani was standing in his door. He said he was so amazed, he wanted to meet Rudy Giuliani, the crime fighter. And he said, Giuliani looked at him, he said, bring me the medallion, talking about me. He wrote it in the book. Comey said, he told me to bring me the medallion. He said, I couldn't find nothing on Sharpton. State went after. Here we are, some 30 years later, and Giuliani getting ready to be arraigned. And I'm not celebrating that. I'm not celebrating that. I'm raising that if you keep fighting. Well, James Brown's favorite scripture was Psalms 37, fret not thyself because of evildoers. Neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, because they shall soon. It didn't give us a date, but they shall soon. Didn't tell us how long. They shall soon. Trump took out ads saying give the death penalty to the exonerated Central Park 5. Kari White sitting here this morning. When you see Kari White, they mugshot Trump this week, just say they will soon. Soon got him. Prosecuted and get him, soon got him. They shall soon be cut down. God got a way of putting soon on you and make your enemies leave you alone. In that climate, country in disarray, wall-to-wall coverage of people that were over government now being prosecuted. As they try to turn back the clock on us, I want y'all to see the context of the march. Women's right to choose, cancel. Affirmative action, cancel. They're in court now trying to stop contracts so that people in communities can't get the contract to serve their communities paid by the taxpayers of that community. We're paying for them to cut us out. That's why we're marching. Because in the instability of the country, they need to see thousands of us of different races and genders stand up and say that we will not bend, we will not buckle, we will not bow. Too many of us. And one of the things I want us to be clear, I want everybody, we have staff call twice a week. I want everybody to understand that one of the things we're going to show is how we know how to go to Washington. Everybody, we're going to have security, but I want everybody in here to be a deputy and everybody watching me on TV. We are not January 6th. If you going down there to cut up, don't come to our march. We're going to show folk how you march with dignity, how you march with peaceful pride. I want Saturday night to show January 6th how they tried to rip down the building of the Capitol and how they wanted to hang the vice president and then show us standing in the shadows of Lincoln in the name of Martin Luther King. I want you to see who are the peacemakers and the peace breakers. I'm going to show y'all how to act in America on next week. We have reason to be angry. And let me tell you something, the march next week is just a continuation. We coming right back. Following Saturday, we going to Inglewood with the Placide family. We going to keep marching. Don't act like y'all do one march and the struggle's over. Keep your sneakers on. Because this is a long fight. But they never gave up. They went right, let me tell you, again, I'm trying to set context. They went from segregationist. 1960, Kennedy won over Nixon. They killed Kennedy in 63. Johnson, who had been a Texas conservative Democrat, became president. But because of the movement, Johnson had to shift on civil rights issues. If you read the stories of Lyndon Johnson, the president, he used to teach in Texas, he used to call blacks the N-word. But because of the marching and the pressure, they had turned this country around where he became president that signed that bill. And it never was one tactic. A lot of these people that have never studied movement don't understand that the criticisms you hear of us were the criticism they always was. Well, I ain't into that King thing. First of all, everybody in King's era wasn't into that. You had Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and CORE that were doing freedom rides at the same time King was doing marches. There were those that would get on the buses, the Greyhound buses, and challenge segregation at the same time. James Farmer, who was one of the founders of CORE, didn't make the March on Washington because he was in jail in Louisiana. So act like it was just one way. But everybody did what they did that contributed to the whole. Students went to student sit-ins. CORE went their way. NACP and Urban League and Dr. King went their way. Malcolm had their way. But they didn't get in each other's way. Anytime you see those that get in the way of others, they're working for those that are against all of us. I got folk out here now I don't agree with, but you never hear me say don't support them, don't go. But you're going to have some hired hands that's going to try to cause confusion about our march. Just march past them. Because what we are representing is bigger than some miniature enslaved-minded people. Nixon was defeated by Kennedy in 60. Went back home to California and ran for governor and got beat again. I want y'all to watch this now. I ain't reading no notes. I learned this stuff. I was raised in this. 60 lost for president, 62 lost for governor at home. 64, Johnson runs. Kennedy been killed, Johnson runs Democrat. The Republicans nominated, watch this, a man named Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater was a right-wing conservative, states' rights kind of guy from Arizona. His subtle message to whites is in your heart. You know I'm right. Meaning vote for us and back these folks up. Johnson beat him. Johnson signed the 64 Civil Rights Act as a result of the struggle, including the March on Washington in 63. Ended up signing the 65 Voting Rights Act because of the Selma March, helped dramatize that. 60 4 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, 68 housing. All that coming out of the movement, out of different strategies. 68, Martin Luther King and others had come out against the war in Vietnam. And some had started fighting. But watch this, 68, Johnson's vice president's gonna run. Johnson stepped out because of the war in Vietnam, made him unpopular. Hubert Humphrey's gonna run. And who comes back to run but Richard Nixon? Man that was defeated in 60, defeated at home in 62 for governor. They never give up. Nixon came back and put in power benign neglect. He became president in 68, brought in Daniel Moynihan, and they said treat blacks nice, but neglect them. And the whole winds of the 60s began a retreat in the 70s, saying we've got to back up all of the civil rights thing, be nice about it, but neglect them. And by the end of the 70s, they had destabilized all of the urban programs and all of the rights movement. Why? Because they didn't let 1 or 2 elections stop them. You got to understand why we have to do what we got to do. They went from Nixon, got him reelected. He got caught in Watergate, he had to resign. Jimmy Carter won for 4 years. They took Carter out with Ronald Reagan, an actor, smooth talking, grin, smile, while he cut everything that we want. Went from Reagan into Bush, then Bill Clinton that did with triangulation. This has been a long way of 60 years of eroding what we want. So here we are at the end of that chain, 2023, and we have got to fight to restore what they took from us and protect what we have accomplished. So the only way they can do it is to get you quiet. They ain't even talking about black rights no more. They ain't talking about women's rights. They too busy doing mugshots of Trump. They're not talking about gun violence. Some guys went in, young kids, in a funeral last week in Chicago and shot up the funeral. That's how mad we have become. Didn't even make the news. They too busy booking former folk that was running government. That's why the objective of a march is to make them pay attention to what they want to ignore. I don't care what they want to talk about. Next Saturday and Sunday, they're going to have to talk about thousands of us got on buses and come down to Washington and say you can cancel student debt, but the students are going to march. You can take women's rights away for their body, but the women going to march. You can erode our voting, but we going to march. We going to stand up and make you pay attention to what we got to say. Well, Mal, I don't know what marching does. Obviously, you don't know. Marching don't solve a problem. Marching is not designed to solve a problem. Marching is designed to expose the problem. But if you don't put the problem out there, ain't nobody gonna solve it. You think these folk gonna solve your problem unless you become a problem telling them about your problem? I talked to somebody, I had to go to Washington this week, and I was talking to somebody. He stopped me at the airport, wanted to take a selfie. He said, you know, I'm coming to the march next week. I said, good. He said, and you know, I'm a student at Georgetown. I said, well, then you ought to be at the march. I said, do you know the history of Georgetown? They said, no. I said, Georgetown University, first of all, there's a book out called 272. You ought to read it. He said, what is 272? I said, Georgetown ended up being owned by some Jesuit priests and Jesuit order. They went broke. They had a financial, I'll say, shortfall. But in plain language, they went broke. The way they got out of debt, they debated that we do not believe, some of them said we do not believe in the sale of human bodies. The others said, but it is a business, and we must do what we have to do. And they sold 272 slaves to a man in Louisiana named Henry Johnson. The whole book is about this, written by a descendant of one of those 272 slaves. Just 2 weeks ago, I went down South Carolina where my great-grandfather was a slave, brought my daughters. This is no joke. They reduced black bodies to commodities, stood us on the top of boxes like we were a bar of soap or a box of cereal, and sold us based on our height, based on our masculinity, based on who looked like we could pick cotton. And we built this country on our backs and never got paid. We fought our way into getting out of bondage, then fought our way into being regarded and impacted as full citizens. We vote because we fought for the right to vote. We have jobs because we fought to have the right to have jobs. And as a result of fighting, a black woman is sitting as the judge over Donald Trump in Washington. Another black woman in the state of Georgia, where Martin Luther King was born and raised. This black woman, a few miles from Dr. King's birthplace, will be arraigning Donald Trump in Atlanta, Fulton County, Georgia, because we fought. Those that were the left out are the ones at the front of this system. You can complain or you could fight. I remember when I was a young activist, I heard a preacher say something I never forgot. He said, Remal, tears and sweat look the same. Both of them wet, taste the same. You can decide which one you're going to do. Are you going to cry about what's wrong, or are you going to sweat and go to work and do something about it? Ain't much difference in tasting your sweat and tasting your tears. But let me tell you something. Don't nobody feel sorry for you. Anybody that'll sell you like a pack of meat don't care nothing about you crying. Anybody that will take away votes so they can stack the courts to take away your rights don't care about you crying. But if you go to work and start organizing and mobilizing and sweating and back up your tears, then they'll have to take you serious. And you're going to always have naysayers. I'm going to tell you this now. We're going to have a successful march, and you're going to, with success, you're going to have those, I tell my daughters, that's going to criticize all the way. And don't, I'm not talking about the right wing and Fox News. You know they going to say something. I'm talking about folk look like you. I'm talking about folk that's supposed to be down. You don't forget now, everybody that comes at you ain't never been with you. Everybody that is your kinfolk or your skinfolk ain't really your kinfolk. And some of them that are activists so they want to show. Don't forget Cain and Abel had the same daddy. You be talking about we come out the same thing. That don't mean we the same person. Cain killed Abel. They had the same daddy. Talking about, you know, we brothers. Yep. But you might be a Cain brother. I mean, both of them grew up the same house. Both of them had the same holidays. But Cain was distorted and killed his brother. You got some distorted brothers and sisters out here today that all they want to do out of envy and jealousy is kill Cain all over again. Why Sharpton on television? Well, if I wasn't, they ain't putting you on. Why don't you use what we got to get what we want? And then some of them, tell you how they just got something wrong in their head. Some folk just crazy. Something wrong mentally, because don't even make sense. You talk to some people 2 minutes, you realize they ain't all here. Because what they saying don't make sense. And just because somebody looks like they know what they're doing, don't mean they got good sense. I heard a guy tell a joke the other day, said that there was this place that they had people that had mental challenges. And this young lady and young man was walking by the pool. And the young man fell in the pool and was drowning. The young woman looked and jumped in the pool and dove all the way down and grabbed the young man and pulled him up through the water. He kicking, screaming, didn't know how to swim. She knew how to swim, and she brought him to the surface, brought him over and dragged him out of the pool and helped him get his breathing back. Saved his life. People came in from other parts of the facility and said, she is all right. She saved her life. She reacted like someone in full charge of her senses. And they took her to the main instructor and said, you can release her, let her go home. We saw her reaction to a crisis, which meant that she was mentally sound. And the instructor looked at her and said, well, we're glad about it. I have the paperwork here. We want to salute it, even though it was a sorry outcome. And the other instructor said, what do you mean? He said, yes, she did the right thing. She reacted well. She operated in the urgency of the moment. She said, but the young man she saved, we just found him 2 hours ago in the bathroom hanging up by the shower curtain. And the young lady that they said had broke through and was saying, she said, oh no, he didn't hang himself. I just hung him up there to dry off. Which means some of y'all can do something great, don't mean you got good sense. So I ain't letting y'all out too quick. The other part of this, and I'll let you go. The other part of this is that we are in this part of the movement, in this tribe or spiritual movement. We believe in a stronger power. And we believe, that's why I love the Plackett family. Y'all stand up. this Placide family. We going to Inglewood. We going to Inglewood with them week after next. Where's Nolan? Nolan and those that we fighting for convictions that were not right. That's why I'm marching for the Nolans of this world. Because you got to, even in dark times, you got to have faith that even God knows that you're going to be there. You got to have faith that God himself will depend on you because God knows the faithful from the trendy. You know, we always talk about that story, Reverend Marshall, about Job and how Job stood and withstood all that he was tried. But you know the principle of that story we miss. Principle of that story is that it started with a conversation with God, the devil. Devil wanted to test something. And the devil said, I bet you I can get your servant Job. God said, have you tried my servant Job? Well, think about that now. How much of it is a compliment for God to say you can test him, but you can't, I know you can't break him. I want to have that kind of faith that says I don't care what you do, try Sharpton, put him in jail, try Sharpton, scandalize his life, try him. But I touched him when he was a little boy. Have you tried my servant Al? Has you been tried? I want to try it and to test it to walk with me. You that ain't never been through nothing. You that have never faced nothing. You that have never had misery. You don't know what you could take. People come to me all the time now that we got a little prominence and Reverend Al, here's my resume. You ought to hire me. I never had any problems, never been smeared. Here are my references. Everybody likes me. Call whoever you want. Went to the right schools, got the right fraternities. Get away from me. I don't like folk that ain't never made a mistake. I don't like folk that ain't never been knocked down. I don't like folk that ain't never been smeared and talked about. Because if you ain't never been through nothing, if you hang out with me, you liable to go through something. And if you ain't never been through nothing, I don't know if you can make it through something. I like folk that been knocked down and dragged through the mud and cast aside and never gave up, and somehow God made a way anyhow. If you ain't been through the fire, if you have not been through the flood, you just in here today guessing what God could do. But if you've been through trials and been through tribulations and been rejected and talked about and cast aside, you know what God can do because he done it for you. When I go to Washington, I'm the child of one that was rejected and cast aside. Didn't know where my daddy was. But I'm going to march on those whose daddy and granddaddy tried to take things from me. I know what God did for me. I often tell that story about my pastor, Reverend William Jones. Reverend Jones told a story about how when he was sick and he was laying in the hospital. And I remember we went to see him one day. I said, Dr. Jones, they say you gonna be all right. It was rough for a minute, but you gonna be all right now, they say. You turned the corner. It was years before he passed. And he said, Al, you know, I was in a place I never been. He said, I was laying in the bed. I wasn't really asleep or laying here in the hospital, but I wasn't awoke. And halfway through sleepiness and being woke, he said, I looked up and I saw what appeared to me as death walk in my hospital room. He said, and I looked up and I could recognize it was darkness, that death was coming to get me. He said, now I've been preaching so long, you know, preachers think we can talk anybody out of anything. He said, I tried to talk death out of taking me. So I tried to strike up a conversation with death. He said, I said, Death, how long have you been on the job? He said, Death wouldn't answer me, just kept moving closer to my bed. He said, I tried again. I said, Death, don't you sometimes feel guilty about the work you've done? You've taken parents from the children. I got children. You've separated married couples, been together 40 years. You've taken babies in their infancy. Don't you feel guilty sometimes about the work you do? Marcia, he said, Death ignored him, just kept him moving closer to his bed. He said, Death got to the edge of his bed around his feet. He said, I tried one more time, Al. He said, I said, Death, have you ever made a mistake? Maybe you got the wrong room in the hospital. Maybe it's not me you're supposed to come at. Have you ever made a mistake? He said, but to my surprise, Death stopped. And Death looked at me and answered me for the first time. He said, let me go back. Yes, I have been out here a long time. In fact, I've been out here since the beginning of time. I took Adam and Eve out. I took everybody in between. He said, yes, I've been out here a long time. He said, and yes, sometimes I've had to do bad things, but I had to take everybody out. He said, but let me address that last question. He said, did I make a mistake? Have I got the wrong room? He said, let me tell you something. I've taken out the rich. I've taken out the poor. I've taken out the beloved and I've taken out the hated. I've taken out the powerful and I've taken out the powerless. But in all these centuries, I only made one mistake. It was about 2,000 years ago. They sent me up a hill called Calvary. When I got up there were 3 men hanging there. I went for my assignment. I grabbed the one on the right, and I took him with me. I come back and grabbed the one on the left, and I took him with me. But then I came back and I grabbed the one in the middle. But a funny thing happened when I grabbed the one in the middle. He grabbed me back, and we started wrestling and tussling and fighting for 3 long days. I wrestled with that man in the middle, and early the 3rd morning, I had to let him go. I never did get that man in the middle of Calvary. I'm on my way to Washington because I worked for the man in the middle of Calvary, the man that death couldn't stop, the man that wickedness can't betray. I work for the man that'll stand up. If you stand up, he'll hold you up. God will make a way. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. I know they done stacked the Supreme Court, but because he lives, all fear is gone. Because he lives.
They called him Jesus. He came to love.
searching days because he lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because God lives. All of my fears, they're gone. Because I know who holds the future. And life is worth the living just because he lives. Oh, because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know who holds my future. Life is worth the living just. Yes, life is worth all of the living just. Say life is worth the living just. Yes, life is worth the living just. And life is worth the living just because he lives. Hallelujah. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Sing it like you mean it. Sing it like you mean it. We want justice. We want freedom. Got to have justice. One more time, y'all. One more time, y'all. Everybody's singing. Yeah. I'm gonna open the doors of the movement. There may be someone here today that have never joined National Action Network. You hear us on the radio, you see sometimes our television stuff, but you never became a member of the organization. If you're here today and never joined, just come down either aisle, come straight to me, and let us sign you up into the organization. Just come right down to me right now and become a member of National Action Network. You that are listening on radio or watching on TV, you can join by calling 1-877-626-4651. 1-877-626-4651. Come on, look at her coming. You come with it. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Everybody's singing. Yeah, sing it like you mean it. Sing it like you mean it. Sing it like you mean it. One more time, y'all. One more time, y'all. One more time, y'all. everybody now. Everybody sing. Everybody singing. Hey. All right. We're going to raise our offering. About 2 minutes to 11. I tell folk I'll let you go to 11, but we're going to be about 7 minutes after today. So let's be quick in raising our offering, taking our new members. I need all of you that are volunteering to help in Washington next Saturday. Make sure you see Katrina. Buses leave here. What time is the buses leaving here? 3 o'clock. I said 3 o'clock. I know what I'm saying. Talk about Reverend Al, I got to be there at 3 o'clock. When I'm going to sleep, you got 4 hours of sleep on the bus and 4 hours sleeping back. That's 8 hours. You be ready for church Sunday morning. There ought to be one day that we sacrifice little sleep while this nation's trying to put everything we've gained to sleep. All right, I need everybody to give to the best of your ability. I wanted to thank the labor unions